Put your campaign on target. Charter can help with targeted advertising solutions based on where your voter lives and what he or she is watching. Call us today, 394-2484.
Welcome back. Later in the show, we'll speak with Missouri State Senator Scott Roop. And then Ed and I will take a look at a couple of recent TV ads. Right now, we're happy to welcome Dave Drebes as our guest. Dave is the publisher of the Arch City Chronicle, which looks at political issues from a St. Louis perspective. He also publishes a daily subscription political newsletter called the Missouri Scout. All that, and he's a contributing columnist for the St. Louis Business Journal. Welcome to Midwest Talking Points, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Dave. Well, Dave, first of all, for our viewers, tell us a little bit about all of those entities you're doing, all that writing you do, so people understand a little better.
Right. Whenever I hear that, I always think, boy, my parents must be proud. You know, it sounds like I'm busy or something.
Yeah.
But you know, I started.
We'll have your parents on later.
Exactly.
That's later in the show. Go ahead.
Arch City Chronicle started following mainly city politics, and it was a paper for a while. Now it's just a blog. And then I started writing for the Business Journal maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, and I write for them twice a month. And that's mainly city and state politics. And then Missouri Scout is all state politics. It's sort of an insider's tip sheet, if you will. And I do that every day.
One of the things that I've appreciated in reading the Arch City Chronicle over the years is you've really dug into campaign finance reports, and sometimes those are areas in which the mainstream media doesn't really cover that well. What has that been like, and with the repeal of campaign finance limits, has that changed the way your coverage has been?
You know, my career before journalism was as a stockbroker, so I've always had an appreciation for the numbers and being able to see the story that's in the numbers. And it's really easy now. You know, I hear of old reporters, you know, for a generation ago having to go down and look, file through the pages, whereas now you sit at your computer, you can just click through a million of them in no time. So I do follow them very closely. It tells you who's giving the money, how they're spending it. You can really get a real sense for what's going on. Since the law reformed, there's been bigger checks, but the transparency has increased. You have a better sense of who is giving to the different candidates.
You know, Dave, staying on that subject, people are noticing in the last week or so $150 million raised by Senator Obama in the national race. Jay Nixon and Kenny Hulshoff getting $100,000 checks, and you know, last year I think Chris Koster got a big $100,000 check. What do you think that does to voters? It doesn't seem like people sort of go, wow, but it doesn't seem to really affect the voters to think, you know, so-and-so got big checks or anything. Do you have a sense of how the large checks and the large amounts impact voters? Do they care?
I have not seen any sort of backlash against, you know, I haven't heard that thing getting bought by so-and-so, being paid for by so-and-so that much. And maybe it's because all these politicians are taking big checks that they're a little weary about throwing that accusation out there because it would affect them all. I mean, really, it's both parties, and it's pretty much across the board. Politicians are just receiving bigger contributions.
It might be too early to tell, but do you think it's going to affect the way politicians and elected officials behave?
I don't, you know, I mean, and I'm cynical about a lot of things, but I just, the way I've always sort of viewed it, or the way it's always made sense to me, is that usually that money flows to where people already have positions. I don't really see a whole lot of situations where it looks like the politician has accepted the money and then changed positions. That just doesn't seem to happen as much. More you see these different specific interest groups making investments in, you know, lower candidates, thinking someday they'll go higher and things like that. So I don't think it'll change. I don't think they're really buying the process too much.
Dave, you mentioned the transparency of the new laws in Missouri. If you get a check over $5,000, you have 24 or 48 hours to put that online. Could you, Arch City Chronicle and some of your other efforts are online. You talk a little bit about how our viewers could go online, what they would do to see what candidates are getting and how, just kind of a thumbnail on how you could view those.
Right. It's an organization called Missouri Ethics Commission. It's a branch of the government, and basically, when you get your money in, you have 48 hours, if it's over $5,000, to file with them to let people know that you received these big contributions. So you can go online to the Missouri Ethics Commission website and you just type in your candidate's name that you're interested in. You know, you click on it, and then it'll show up if they've filed one of these reports. And again, you just click on it again, and then it'll show up. Just comes up on your screen who gave, how much they gave. Now there isn't, you know, I mean, if I could wave a wand, I would have something where you could automatically be alerted. You have to go out and seek it out. You can't sort of sign up and then just get the alerts yourself.
Well, I will say, as somebody who's worked on campaigns before and just has a general interest in this, I've found that website to be cumbersome at times and hard for a regular person to weed through. Do you find that hard as well in doing your research, or you're just used to it?
I think having heard about these reporters having to go down to the office and file through the papers, I've always just felt like it's pretty easy. Yeah, so I haven't found it to be that cumbersome.
To Mindy's point, I think the future of this ought to be where, you know, now campaigns, even state rep campaigns, have almost everything on even if it's either a home computer or laptop. Getting more and more of this transparency seems to be great. But let's leave that aside. Tell us what you think about the state of Missouri. Comment on the statewide races and then the House versus the Senate. Later we're going to talk to one of the senators who will tell us, I'm sure, how strong the Republicans are this time. But what do you think's going on in Missouri?
You know, it's a changed election this year. You're seeing that from the right track, wrong track numbers all across the board. It looks like a good year for Democrats. So in those statewide races, I think most polls show Jay Nixon having almost a lock on the governor's race, and people think there will be coattails from that translating down to the other statewide races. The Senate looks like it's going to be a wash, just sort of the way that the different races have sort of shown up, the recruiting efforts. It looks like it's going to be about even, the Democrats and Republicans holding about ground. And in the state House, it looks like Democrats are going to pick up, you know, you talk to Democrats, it's 6, 7, 8. You talk to Republicans, it's, you know, 3, 4. So probably 5, 6 is a good guess for how many seats the Democrats pick up.
We're going to take a look at ads later on today from Peter Kinder and Sam Page. Tell us what you think of the lieutenant governor's race.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest ones to be able to handicap, because Kinder is an incumbent. In a lot of those other races, you don't have an incumbent there. And by being an incumbent, he has higher name ID, which means Sam Page has to use a lot of money just to get his name ID up there. That said, Kinder is tied to Matt Blunt, who has low approval ratings, and so there's a message there that could work for Page. I mean, I think it's a coin toss, but, you know, you have to pick a coin toss, so I'd go with Page if I had to pick one of those.
Oh, stunning development. Don't smile so broadly, Mindy. Thanks for being with us, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Coming up next, Missouri State Senator Scott Roop and his take on this year's elections with a focus on Republican state Senate priorities. We'll be right back with Midwest Talking Points.
This moment in Missouri political history is provided by the Missouri State Archives. In 1911, the Capitol building in Jefferson City was struck by lightning, and within a few hours, only the walls were left standing. This was the second Capitol building to be destroyed by fire in the 88 years that Jefferson City had been the seat of government for Missouri. Jefferson City firemen arrived shortly after the alarm was sounded, but could not contain the flames to the dome. People rushed in to save documents and valuable paintings, but were soon chased out by the dense smoke. In the coming years, Missouri government went on in local churches, the Supreme Court building, and anywhere else that had enough office space available. Eventually, out of the ashes arose today's new Capitol, completed in 1917. To discover more Missouri history moments, visit MissouriDigitalHeritage.com.